Welcome to the World Hard Enduro podcast. Cody, thanks for being here. So you have quite a bit of experience on the Hard Enduro World Championship side, or the European side, let's say, and then obviously, multiple national champion inside the USA. What is the biggest difference between the FIM Hard Enduro World Championship and the AMA US Hard Enduro Series?
Yeah, the biggest difference is, I don't know, I think the rider talent is a little bit deeper of a field in Europe versus America. In America, we have a few, like some really good riders right now, but once you kind of get out of the top five, it really spreads out quite a bit. And, I know I can have an issue in most of these races and probably still get top five. And where if I go to Europe, I have to have a really good race to be up there in the top five. So the talent in Europe is just a little bit higher. And I feel like a big part of that is all the guys who are still there, pretty much minus like Theodore and Wade, have come from a trials background. So you have more like kind of people who are really good at trials or, had a lot of trials foundation in the past, switching over to hard enduro. And like in America right now, I'm kind of the only guy who is true trials. I guess there's Quinn Wenzel. He rides for Reju in America.
Okay.
And he came from trials as well, but he's a top 10 type guy in our series. So just the talent pool is a lot deeper, I feel like, in Europe.
But and what about the actual like events themselves, like the tracks? I know that you were at Tough Like Rorr just before Erzberg, which looked insane as well.
It was messed up.
It's messed up. Does the format follow a very similar pattern for each race? So like for TKO to Tough Like Rorr to whatever races are happening inside the US calendar, or is it like a standard format for each race? One day multi-lap.
Yeah, there's no standard format. They're doing their best they can to help out with like the amateur side of things to make that easier. So a lot of them are kind of like a knockout style format like TKO, where the amateurs get their chances to race and you have to qualify in like on Sunday for the main race. Grinding Stone, I'm sure you've seen the videos of that one, like the huge slabs. That's like a knockout style race. King of Motos is a rally type race, but it's only one day and it's not 5-6 hours like for the leader to finish. It's not crazy long, but it's a GPS style race. So each one of our races are different. It just kind of depends on the promoter. And I think the biggest thing is like the land access. Like some places are really big, so you can have that rally style format, and other ones are a little bit tighter, not as big of a loop, so it goes in like the knockout type races. So each race is different, which is kind of nice. I kind of like it, but it's almost like we need two or three set types of races, because everything then it starts getting confusing. You can't follow everything. And in Europe, you have a huge widespread type of racing too. You have Erzberg, which is a 4-hour sprint. You got Romaniacs. Serbia is very similar to Romaniacs, a little bit shorter though. But yeah, I think our races are pretty good, but everyone's kind of trying to, like, they want to have the hardest race, I feel like, as the promoter. And like every year they're making it harder because we're finishing in 3.5 hours, and they're like, oh, we need you out there longer. But then we're just getting destroyed and don't want to do anything for a day or two after. And like Battle of the Goats, originally I think used to be 2 laps. And then they added a bunch more stuff on the second lap. And then this year, because we finished in, a little over 3.5 hours, they added a whole nother, like half a lap on the third lap. So we ended up doing 2.5 laps, and they're pretty big laps. And, it took me 4 hours and 20 minutes. And there's a 6-hour time cutoff. And I think we had 5 people finish the race or something like that. So in 6 hours.
That's crazy.
So I don't know, they're going to, and then Tough Like Rorr, it was the same exact course as last year that had perfect conditions. And like we had Johnny Walker there and Jack Price, which was really cool. And obviously everyone saw the video of me like pretty much smoked and passed out nearly at the finish. And I talked to Johnny about it at Erzberg, and Johnny's like, what happened? And I was like, he's like, that race was already hard last year. He's like, he thought it was a straight up good hard race. And this is coming from a guy who's won Erzberg 2 or 3 times, whatever it was. And it was the same course from last year. And then they added more hard sections at the end and a couple little sneaky short punches earlier on the second lap. But it was 6 hours to finish. And they added hard sections from the previous year. And then it dumped rain so hard the night before the race, and they didn't change anything. And I was in first gear just riding trials in the humidity. It wasn't crazy hot, but you're in first gear overheating, like you can't cool down. You're stuck in rocks for hours. Yeah. And I finished with 6 minutes to spare, so 5 hours and 54 minutes. And it's not like Romaniacs where you get a mandatory 30-minute break in the middle of the day for fuel yourself up, put gas in the bike, hang out, drink some water. Like, I'm riding for 6 hours, and Romaniacs has a ton of transfer and really fast sections where you can recover. And I think I hit fourth gear one time for a very, very short bit on that whole track there. So it was too much.
Yeah, it looked pretty insane from the viewership and from the social media point of view. Does that track stay the same for the amateurs as well? Or do the amateurs ride like a different track or like a less intense track?
They ride the same track, but it's more of like a knockout style race. And the amateurs know they have no chance of finishing. So their day is mostly on Saturday. And they have a pretty fun technical qualifier that it's pretty good. It's not crazy hard or anything, but it's, you'll get arm pump. The pros will make a couple mistakes here and there. And then if you don't make that, they do like an LCQ. So there's you get to race again. But it gets harder as the race goes on. So they do a good job of trying to get the amateurs pretty far into the race. And last year, I think almost all the amateurs did one lap, but this year they allowed more amateurs because, they were listening to the feedback of the riders. More people wanted to make it in. And I think a lot less people made one lap just because of the conditions.
Yeah. I think that's what makes the sport so unique is that amateurs and pros end up riding usually the same track, right? At the same time or roughly the same time. They're kind of competing against each other. And I think that's what makes it quite unique and interesting for the amateurs to come join.
I feel like it gives a good chance for like maybe someone no one's ever heard of too to come out and like represent themselves without having to have like a pro license like you need in motocross or supercross. A few years ago at like TKO, the Tennessee Knockout, there was these Hawaiian brothers who came. I'd never even heard of them. And they're the Satterfield brothers. And they came and they raced literally every single qualifier and race at TKO and finished, I think, top 10 at TKO. And then all of a sudden you start seeing more and more in these Hawaiians. So they kind of like put their foot out and got their jumped head over heels. But I'd never even heard of these guys. And here they are getting top 10 at TKO. So I feel like that's a cool opportunity for some amateurs to prove themselves.
Yeah, that's super cool. And another example from the Hard Enduro, the Hard Enduro World Championship is Tadej Blazusiak at Erzberg, right?
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, right. He got, I think Erzberg is like renowned for like the most factory rides given at that race. It's like the factories are looking at who's finishing there and they can really base their decisions for following years on that, which is really cool.
That was when things were good though, and they hadn't spent all their budget on Supercross and Motocross and then MotoGP though. So they were like, yeah, we'll hire you. And now it's like, okay, we only have Manny, we only have Billy and Michael Wachner. I feel like he's like factory support. I'm like, you guys you barely even have a team anymore.
Yeah. And also on our last podcast, we were discussing like why not, the budget's there to have Manny ride. Unfortunately, he's injured as well as Billy, right? So the ride is still there. Like, why not get a junior rider up into that spot, give him the potential to, make a name for himself. And you never know, you might see someone do some pretty remarkable things.
Yeah, the bikes, there's already the team paid for and the budget accounted for. I mean, I was joking with Tristan Hart. I was like, are you going if they call you? And he's like, my phone's on silent. But no one ever called him. to fill in for Manny in Serbia. So, I think they're just saving money whenever they can.
What would it take for like a pro rider from the US to make the commitment to move over to Europe to like tackle the FIM Hard Enduro World Championship and really give it a shot, from a championship perspective?
I feel like this is obviously difficult and you got to kind of drop everything you have there and fully commit to Europe. But I think some stuff that could be very helpful is like what Mario Ramon's doing with like his MR74 Academy. And he's got some like the young kids from like, they're from Mexico, but also from America. I'm not exactly, they're kind of both, maybe dual citizenship, but like the Pascal
Angus,
brothers.
Agus Pascal, as well as there's a Canadian rider as well.
But he got hurt, so he wasn't at Erzberg. But like same thing, like Graham has his stuff where you can kind of like be on his team, and that makes it helpful because otherwise, it's a big commitment to move there and rent a van, but that's crazy. So it's probably almost cheaper to buy a van and, probably be in like that Spain area because it seems like that's where most of those guys are riding and training. And I know it's difficult with land access in like Austria and Germany for manning those guys. But it seems like Italy seems like a good spot too. So I feel like you'd have to relocate, buddy up with someone there and kind of team up and tag team it to make it happen.
Yeah, for sure. It's quite interesting. Like I really hope to see in the future that we do see more American guys coming across doing the full championship. Or, I mean, I wouldn't say vice versa, but we do see Johnny Walker, right, going across to America, doing the Endurocross riding, right, the Endurocross series, which is also, kind of the opposite of going to Europe, which I think is also pretty cool. And I think it gives a lot of exposure. What it seemed like for the first year when a lot of the Hard Enduro World Championship riders went to TKO, there was so much support for them, right? Like they were getting autographs. Good. Yeah, it looked really cool.
Yeah, it's really good for that. And I feel like with, Johnny and Jack Price also came to Tough Like Rorr previous year. And I feel like we have a little bit more flexibility for like promoters to try and help out and get some of the Europeans here. Because if you're part of the FIM World Championship, I know it's really expensive to kind of buy in and be part of the championship. So it was almost better when it was all just one-off races without a championship, because promoters would be like, oh, I'll pay for your flights and here's €2,000 to come. And then you can make bonus on top of it because I used to have a purse. And, now at Erzberg, it's like, here's your rock and spend $3,000 like cheapest to come and race it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. A rock from the Iron Giant itself, eh?
Yeah. I probably have some in my boots that I brought home from my crash. Smaller rocks though.
How is the purse inside the AMA US Hard Enduro series? Is it enough to, keep on going? Like,
yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, obviously for like a factory rider like myself or the KTM guys, like, you have the purse from like the bonus from the manufacturer and some like personal bonuses here and there as well. But, like at King of Motos, I think it was $5,000 to win maybe this year. Grinding Stone was $3,000 or $4,000. And then, some of my bonus contingency stuff on top of that. So it does pay pretty well. And then, like the one in Pennsylvania, Tough Like Rorr, they were actually looking at trying to do the FIM thing. And then they heard how much it cost to be part of that series. And they're like, well, screw it. We'd rather just pay extra to the riders so they feel thankful to come out. So like that one, it was like $12,000 to win, I think.
Nice.
And then like Tristan Hart was second and he probably got like 5 or 7, and they pay all the way to 40th place or something. So like 40th place awesome. Gets $100. You get $100. You basically almost get your entry fee back.
I mean, but that's still pretty cool though. But
yeah,
something.
I like it when it gets spread out, right? Because there's very few people who are lucky enough and fortunate enough to where things work out for them. Like it worked out for me, a guy like Tristan Hart, Colton Haker as well, doing Endurocross, and it's not an easy sport to like actually kind of be able to make money at it without having to be paycheck to paycheck essentially. So I think it's better when the promoters have a good purse, but it kind of gets spread out a little bit further to help out the guy who's doing it on his own with help from his parents and keep them going a little bit. So like, a tough like Rorr, like I said, they pay all the way back to 40th place, and, 5th place is still getting probably a couple grand maybe. But like you go to like Silver Kings is coming up this weekend in America, and he's really trying to make a big push, the promoter of that, to match like European, like Romaniacs. There's the parade through town and the prologue, and then they have a big party up on top of the mountain after the race, like at a ski resort. So he's going for the European discotheque vibe, you know what I mean, after the races.
Yeah, sounds wicked.
It's a really cool event, but that place, he has a big purse, but it only pays top 3. So, you do all this effort, you ride, and then like 4th place comes up with nothing. It's a lot of work. So I kind of like it when, promoters give back to everyone, because it gives the younger generation a little bit more of a push to try and still get up there and hang in there a little bit longer.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also what's pretty cool is the Klim Junior camp that's now like incorporated within the Hard Enduro World Championship. Like Paul Bolton's obviously helping a bunch of junior riders, not only to be ready for the races, but also to be like ready for the business behind it, right? Like, as you know, just by winning races sometimes is not enough, right? Inside the hard enduro scene. So you really need to be good on social media. You need to find other avenues to try to, build your brand, build who you are as a rider. And I think that's what's really cool. And it seems like that's where the future is going now as well, right? With the junior championship, with Matthew Green winning it as well for the first time. And Bruce Brightmore.
I mean, it's the content world side of it now is huge, obviously. And I know, when I was at Factory KTM, we had like social media training, and they straight up told us, it was like, if you have 2 Supercross guys, you have like a Dean Wilson and like maybe a Jake Weimer back a few years ago, like skills wise, results wise, they're about the same, but Dean Wilson has such a huge presence and he's so likable on social media, like they're going to choose him. So it's more than just the riding side of things now. And, you look at a guy like Manny, like he's so like bubbly and charismatic, and, obviously he does a decent amount of YouTube stuff, but he's just a really likable person. So it's a good face to have for the brand. And, Billy Bolt, he's kind of a lunatic. He's a wild cannon, that's for sure. But, he's got a crazy presence on YouTube and does ridiculous stuff besides racing, and he's a huge asset for them. Like, really good person to have. Obviously, he's a little wild, gets hurt here and there, but he's a bad dude. And people want, like, brands want people like that is more than just a race result. You're hanging out with fans, you're interacting, you're giving people these positive experiences. And what Paul Bolton is doing, like, he's a really good guy as well. Like, I love that guy. He's so kind and funny, and it's good that they're kind of teaching the next generation. Like, it's obviously your results need to speak for themselves, but it helps tenfold to just have a good character and presence online.
Yeah. And with the last race that they had at Extras in Serbia, there was actually more junior class entries than the senior class. So that's like a really cool sign as well. I think 13 juniors to 12 senior, or championship contenders, let's say. Some of them are doing dual, so like Mitch Brightmore, he's obviously entered into both. But it's really cool to see, and that's the future of the sport, and it's really cool. And speaking about the future as well, okay, we're not, fortune tellers, we can't tell what's going to happen in the future. But where do you see hard enduro going? It's clear that there's potential. It's clear that it's a sport loved by many enduro and off-road riders. But where do you see the future of the sport going?
I mean, I still see it growing. It's on a huge trend upwards right now. The thing I'm worried about is like land use, access, or people freaking out about, crossing creeks and this and that, or erosion control. But that's my biggest scare right now about the future of the sport. There's a lot of stuff being closed, and I think it's just America is so huge. We have so much government land, and they aren't able to patrol it, so they just close down huge sections, and it's very difficult. So I feel like the races might end up being stuck on like private property type situations, at least in America, because it's very difficult to do like permitting process for like a rally style race. So I think in the States, it is difficult for us to do the rally style race, but it might become shorter, smaller, more sprint, which I think that is almost better for spectators, because if it's a smaller area like TKO, the main final is essentially like a huge outdoor enduro cross track. So it's really good for the fans because they can see a lot more of it. Whereas Romaniacs it's for the riders. It's a huge experience. You cover so much ground, amazing terrain, but for a spectator there, it's trash. You don't get to see anything. You see one thing all day. So I feel like our races might start transferring to smaller-ish venues, maybe a little bit more man-made stuff in it as well. But I think it'll only help with the spectator side of the sport.
Yeah. We saw that also at Getson Rodeo, right? Like there were just, I think, 10,000 people there stacked. It was incredible scenes coming from there.
Yeah, so I think that's where we're going to head in, because the sport keeps growing, but it's hard to have that much land to do a huge A to B style race. And honestly, it gets in rodeo at TKO. That's our biggest fan base of the year. Obviously, TKO is big, so we have all the Europeans come out as well. But the spectators know they can see more of the course than just one passing in a 4-hour day.
And then someplace, I think, in the world that land access isn't too much of an issue. And you recently went there, or last year, the end of last year, was Roof of Africa, Lesotho.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. How was your first Roof of Africa experience? The mother of hard enduro.
It was so long. It never ended, and I could see the end of the first big day, because it's 2 big rally days essentially. I could like see where all the pits were, and like, it was just right up there on this saddle in the mountain, but it took us another hour and a half to get there because they just weaved. It was like they rode us out there and then they just destroyed us mentally by thinking we were almost done. And then we left again on another loop. And, this year was brutal. Like it's obviously hard, but it's not like a crazy hard, difficult race. So the speed and intensity is up a little bit more. And then it's high desert-ish essentially. So it's kind of cold in the morning, but then it really heats up midday, and you're in it for a majority of the day. So I didn't know there was water at the gas stops, and I didn't really like the Sherco guy that helped me out and brought the bike. I never saw him in any of the pits. So the first day I didn't have water I ran out of water for about 3 hours, and wow. I saw Altus, who was like the track manager. They had like the helicopter flying around, and I was like, I need water. Like I am done. And he's like, it's okay, you're almost there. You're almost to the check. And there was like a creek flowing, but there's cow everywhere, like cows up there. And all I'm thinking about is cow shit water. And I'm like, I'm not drinking out of that creek. I will get so sick. Yeah. So it was too long. And Wade Young said the same thing. A bunch of the guys said the same thing. And Wade was like, oh, you're going to love it. Because the previous year, him and Manny were battling for like 4 hours a day. And I think this last year I did 8.5 and 9.5 hours. And the second day, obviously I didn't recover from the first day. I had the worst cramps I've ever had in my life trying to get to the finish. I think I was third the first day, and then Maddie Green got time back from helping someone who was like on the verge of passing out too. Wow. And the next day I just didn't. I hung with those guys for few hours, and then I just literally couldn't. I had a headache the whole way to the finish from dehydration, and got an IV as soon as it was terrible. It was just it was like tough like Rorr. Like we didn't need to go that long, dude. It was too long. Yeah, and it's bad when like Travis Teasdale, Travis Teasdale is a great South African rider. Yes. Obviously he doesn't do as much as he used to, but still a great rider. And I got to the top of this ridiculous climb we did forever. And there's like all these little huts out there where I think like the locals just hang out while they're tending to cattle or whatever they got, goats up there, and I see a bike, but I don't see the rider at all. And I'm like, where? I was like, Travis, where are you? And he was like laying down in some local's hut, like just the only spot he could find shade. I was like, dude, you all right? He's like, I'm okay, mate. You can go ahead. I was like, okay, good luck.
Every year there's a story about multiple people sleeping out there after day one.
Oh, I believe it.
They sleep out there, and the locals there are really, really kind. So they take you in, and you get to just enjoy a bit of the culture for the night, and you start day two.
Especially if you have money, they're really nice to you. Because another thing about I'd come up to a section, I'd be like, why are there rocks across? Like it looked like a trail, but they would like stack rocks in the pro line and make it like harder to pass, and then you would like. They wanted money to move the rocks back out of the way for you to pass. And I'm like, it was hilarious. I've never seen that before to race.
Did you have cash stacked inside your bum bag? I'm sure you had a few.
No, I didn't. I actually,
didn't.
Someone did help me near the end of like, I literally was like almost at the finish and a guy was there on the side of the road and he like did this after he helped me. And I'm like, here's some snacks, dude. I have no money. I'm dead over here. Like here's some sort of snack I had in my pack. Yeah. So I gave him some food.
Yeah, it's such an iconic race, and especially for South Africans and Lesotho as well. It's it really is just one of those hard enduro races that everyone looks forward to at the end of the year. And it's got some great success.
I think we had like 38 gold starters and 13 finished. They said it was like the least amount of finishers percentage-wise they've ever had the year I went, and it makes sense why, because it literally never ended. I'm never getting off this bike today.
Yeah, and some of those passes, as you said, like are never ending. I remember one of them were like switchback, like 99 switchbacks or something ridiculous, and you just climb and climb and climb, and it just never ends. It's pretty crazy. Will you go back there in the future?
I don't know. I keep like people are like, you can go back to Romaniacs, you can go back to the roof, and I'm like, I might go back after I quit and I'll ride silver because I want to enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what Graham's still doing out there. He's a maniac.
Yeah, he's incredible, man. 49 years old, and he's just absolutely doing like Erzberg performance for Graham Jarvis this year was incredible. He was literally lived up to his name as the silent assassin. Didn't get the seriously. Best of starts, and he just picked off guys one by one, and he's an incredible rider. Yeah,
I'm okay with Erzberg. I can do 6 hours in a day, but I don't want to do 6 hours in a day minimum back to back to back anymore. I don't have the desire for that.
Will we see you racing hard enduro at the age of 49?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm saying no.
Okay.
But also, like, I was 26 years old. I had just got a factory KTM. I'm like, I'm going to retire when I'm 30. And I'm like, I don't know why I ever thought that was a good idea, because 30 hit and I'm like, nope. And then, when I really hurt my wrist, the same time Taddy Blazuziak hurt his wrist at Super Enduro, I think in 22, I didn't know if I was going to be able to come back from that. It was a really bad, like, dislocation, and my range of motion is trash, and I really struggled for over a year, and like I was kind of debating it, calling it off. I was like, why am I doing this? It's so much effort and I can't do what I want to do. But it got better. I rebounded, and now I'm like, okay, I'm still in it. I'm not ready to hang it up yet.
You obviously have like a really, really strong trials background, right? And we were speaking earlier in the pod as well about most of the top guys racing the Hard Enduro World Championship, as well as some of the guys inside the US, have got this really, really, really strong trials foundation. Do you think, or would you suggest to someone like, let's say on CW2 training, would you suggest them, they're 30 years old, they want to get better at hard enduro, would you suggest, but only have like a weekend to ride off-road bikes, would you suggest to them to get a trials bike and do more trials bike riding? Or would you say to them, hey, like, why don't you just keep on riding in your enduro bike in like more tougher situations and get used to it?
I definitely recommend the trials bike to people. I mean, I essentially just ride trials now on my dirt bike, but it's a lot easier to learn those skills and techniques with the bike's a lot lighter. And, when you move your body, the bike reacts better with you. The one thing I do tell people though, a lot of people ask me if they should get a trials bike. And I was like, hey, before you get a trials bike, like look up the local trials club in your area, go to a local event, hang out, try and meet some people and chat. And cause normally there's a lot of people in like communities and areas where we live where like, say every Thursday night they have a weekly trials bike session. So you have 6 guys who all meet up and ride trials. I tell people that's the biggest thing. I'm like, just don't buy a trials bike to buy it because you're not going to ride it. You need to, have a group of people to ride with because otherwise you're not going to know what to ride. You're not going to really progress. You're just going to go out in your yard and ride over the same log every single time and you're barely going to ride it. And I feel like enduro and off-road motocross people, they treat trials bikes like toys where they feel like they don't need to work on it. Like it's an RC car where they get it, tinker with it, and then put it back in the garage and don't ride it for a bit. I think the biggest thing is making sure that there's some sort of community where you can get together, try and do a plan ride once every 2 weeks, once a week. And that's really going to elevate your skills a lot more than just having a trials bike to own it and barely ride it.
Yeah, I think that's super good advice. I've ridden a trials bike like 3 times, and I honestly thought I was going to be a lot better at riding the trials bike because I've been riding enduro bikes for so long. And I got into it, and it was just a complete foreign object for me. I didn't even know where to begin.
The bars are all forward. Your back feels weird. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing. You don't know where to begin. So you hop on it, you try and do the same stuff you do on your dirt bike, but honestly, there's more like technique and slower speeds involved instead of just slamming into an obstacle like you would on your enduro bike. You need to practice it a lot different, essentially. And then those skills, once you figure them out, will transfer over to the big bike.
Yeah, exactly. I think like you need to start at the basics again, right? It's like you need to treat it like a completely new sport and get the figure 8s out inside the yard and really like do some balancing drills and stuff like that because as I said, when I got into it, I was like just looking at Tony Bow and looking at the professionals and like Jack Price and just thinking like, wow, these guys like make it look easy, right? And like I can do some stuff on an enduro bike. Let me try to get on a trials bike, and then you end up riding the trials bike, and I look like such a noob just riding around. I'm like, okay, this is not 100%. For me.
That's how I feel now watching Tony Bow. Even when I was like good at the top of my game, I still felt like a fool next to Tony Bow. So you're not the only one.
Yeah, I mean you're the professional as well. So I'm just the amateur. So I'm proper noob. But that pretty much wraps up our podcast. Again, thank you so much for joining the World Hard Enduro podcast. It's been a pleasure having you on.